Okay, today we're going over the study guide in preparation for our test at the next meeting. I will be telling you things about the test, and as I said earlier, please pause the video and ask me questions if you don't understand what was marked on your paper or how I did a problem. The other thing you want to know, I will tell you that the study guide has 40 questions. 10 of these will be double numbered as I've done before, so that you will only have 30 problems that you have to complete on the day of the test, and the other 10 will be bonus if you know how to do them. So watch out for duplicate numbers on the day of your test. Okay, so first off we have, is the algebraic expression a polynomial? If it is, write it in standard form. So when you're trying to decide if it's a polynomial, you're looking at the exponents on your variable, and the fact that this exponent is not a whole number means that this is not a polynomial. Okay, the next one here, uh, looking at the exponents of each of my variables, they are all whole numbers, so it is a polynomial. And to put it in standard form means that you have to start with the variable that has the highest exponent. So that means this is x to the fourth minus x to the third plus x squared plus 6. Okay, find the degree of the polynomial. Well, the degree of the polynomial is looking at your exponents and finding the highest one. So all you had to do here was put 7. And looking at this one, we have the highest one is a 4. So the degree of this polynomial is 4. All right, perform the indicated operations. Write the resulting polynomial in standard form. Okay? Now, this is a plus sign, so really all you're looking at is combining your like terms. So 3x to the 7th plus 4x to the 7th is 7x to the 7th. Okay, that's x to the 4th. I'm looking for any other x to the 4th, and there it is. So minus 7 plus 3 is minus 4x to the 4th. And then I have a 6x, and the only term left is 2x. 6x plus 2x is 8x. So that's what we have. Now, the next one you got to pay attention to because it's minus. And what I told you when we did this lesson, you got to remember to distribute this to all of them. So it's really in your best interest to rewrite each of these terms um, and changing the sign of each term as you write it. This is positive, it will now be negative. This is positive, it will be negative. Oops. This is negative, it will be positive. This is positive, it will be negative. Oops, there's no X on that. Okay. The other thing I do want to point out is there's clearly no work to be shown on those first 4 problems. But this is the kind of work or something of this sort, whether you underline it or draw arrows to show me the work that you need to support your answer. So here I start off with a fourth, x to the fourth, and the other x to the fourth I have is right there. So 8 minus 2 is 6x to the fourth. Then I go to the next one, which is cubed, and the other cube that I have is right here. So I have 8 minus 6, which is 2x cubed. And then I have squareds, and so negative 4x squared plus 8x squared. Negative 4 plus 8 is plus 4x squared. And then I have minus 5 and minus 6, which is minus 11. So that would be our answer. Okay, find the product. Okay, your product, what you have to remember, most of y'all are pretty good about this, is you have to distribute, just like we've been doing for all year. You multiply those numbers, 2 and negative 9 give you negative 18. And what do you do to the exponents? I have 7 here, I have 1 here. That's a total of 8 x's that are being multiplied together. Okay, then my plus sign, 2 times 5 is 10. And I still have 7 x's, so that's x to the 7th. Okay, next. This one, what I suggest you do was the vertical method because it helps you remember or see exactly what your terms are. So I'm basically taking this and I'm going to go write it the same thing down here, x minus 12. And then we're doing it like we do the standard multiplication algorithm. So negative 12 times negative 3 is positive 36. Negative 12 times positive 8x is negative 96x. Negative 12 times x squared is negative 12x squared. Now, x times negative 3 is negative 3x. And you might want to write it there, but that doesn't have an x on it. So what I told you to do was to write it right here, and then you have your like terms already lined up. X times positive 8x is positive 8x squared. And x times x squared is x cubed. So you have everything lined up. You have x cubed. You have negative 12 plus 8 x squareds. So that's minus 4x squared. You have negative 96 and negative 3, which is negative 99x, and then plus 36. So that's what your answer should have been. Okay, use the FOIL method. Okay, a lot of people wrote out every single step. Absolutely, that is fine. Um, the minimum that I should see on your paper when you're doing FOIL is the first terms multiplied, which is x squared, the outside terms, which is plus 4x, the inside terms, which is minus 9x, and the last terms, which is minus 36. So if you don't know where these came from, then you should be pausing your videos and coming to ask me. Okay, plus 4x minus 9x. These two combine. So my answer is going to be x squared minus 5x minus 36. Okay, again, first terms. 6x times x is 6x squared. Outside, 6x times negative 8 is negative 48x. Inside, minus 5 times x. And last, minus 5 and minus 8 is positive 40. Again, my two middle terms combine, giving me 6x squared minus 53x plus 40. All right, another one. First term, 7 times 5, which is 35. Outside, 7 times 2x is plus 14x. Inside, negative 4x times 5 is minus 20x. And last is minus 8x squared, because that's negative 4x times positive 2x. Now, this did say to write it in standard form, which means you start with the highest exponent. And my highest exponent is negative 8x squared. The middle terms combine again. Those are my x terms. Plus 14 minus 20 is minus 6x. And then my last term is a positive 35. Okay, and the last one of FOIL is the first terms. 4x squared times 3x squared is 12x to the fourth, because an x squared and an x squared, when I multiply those together, I add my exponents. The outside term is 4x squared plus 6x squared, which is 24x squared. Inside term, 1 times 3x squared is 3x squared. And the last term is 1 times 6. And just like the other foils, we actually have the two middle terms that combine. They don't always. If the exponents are not the same, y'all, you cannot combine them. So we have 12x to the fourth plus 27x squared plus 6. Okay, moving along. We have find the product of the sum and difference of two terms. I took out the other directions. They will not be on the test, and that was to put it in standard form. So you won't have to worry about that. But this is following the pattern of this is the sum of two terms, and this is the difference of two terms. So this is a squared minus b squared. So when you do that, what I've told you to do is you square the first term, y squared. It's always subtraction, and then you square the last term. So I am fine if you have no other work other than that. Okay, so I go to the next one. 11, my first term is 11. 11 squared is 121, always minus. 10 squared is 100, and then you have the r squared. Now, I just wrote that, but technically, according to the directions on your paper, so let me go ahead and write that. If you put it in standard form, that's negative 100 r squared plus 121. Writing it in standard form, you have to put the highest exponent first, but you can't change the sign of it when you do that. That's not the same thing. So I accepted either one on your paper because I didn't really want you to do it like that. But if you messed it up, then of course I had to take off. Okay, next problem. X to the 8th minus 9, x to the 8th plus 9. So x to the 8th, if I have 8 and I have 8 again, then now I have 16. So it's x to the 16th, and then 9, it's always minus, and 9 squared is 81. So that's what you have. Our product here, okay, these are all binomials squared, which take this pattern, a plus b quantity squared, and that is you square the first term. You always take the same sign that you have here. You 2 times the product of the terms, okay? And then you square the last term. And if you have a minus, then you have a minus right there. That's the only thing different. So this first term is x squared. It's going to take a plus. Then I have to do 2 times 14 times x. And that, of course, is 28x. And then you square the last number, which is 196. Okay, look at the next one. I square the first term, 144. Then I have to multiply 2 times 12 times 7x. And that happens to be, oh, remember it always takes that sign. That's 168x. And then it's always positive, the last one. Okay, always, always, always positive. 7 times 7 is 49x squared. Okay, again, I didn't say write it in standard form, so I'm fine with it if you leave it like that. Okay, 2x squared. So when you square that, now some people write this out. So if you write it out, you got to remember that it's like this. 2 times the first term times that last term. So that's 2 times both terms. You don't need to worry about the minus because you already took care of it there. Plus the last term squared. So that's following that pattern out for this one, and this is what people often forget. You have to square that 2. So this becomes 4x squared minus 4x plus 1. All right. Factor out the greatest common factor. It didn't say tell me what the greatest common factor is. So if you figure out that it's 2, then you have to take the 2 out, which is x minus 2. So if 2 is the greatest common factor, you got to divide 2 into each of those. So what is my greatest common factor here? It's going to be 3 goes into every number, and x squared is in every number, because they all have an x and the lowest one is a 2, so that's why that's what my common one is. So 3 times 7 is 21, and if I had 4 and I took out 2, then I have 2 left. 3 times 2, and I had 3. I took out 2, so I have 1 left, and then my x squareds are the same, and 3 times 5 is 15. So that's what that gives you. This one we've talked about, and this goes along with our trinomials. This is our common factor. So I always like to take it out first, kind of like what we've been doing. So I take out 5x plus 6, and what am I left with is x minus 5. Because once I take this out, I have an x. I take that out, I have minus 5. Okay, and that brings us to the next one, which is a factor by grouping. Okay, and when we factor by grouping, we group the first two and we group the last two. And I'm looking at these and saying, what do I have in common? And they both have an x. The lowest exponent is squared. And when I take that out, I had 3, and I take out 2, so I have 1 left. I had 2, I took out 2, so I don't have any x's left, and I didn't do anything with the numbers, so it's x plus 4. Now, 8x and 32 have a common factor of 8, okay? And I've told you that to simplify things, if these two aren't the same, you can't go any further. So I would go ahead and write x plus 4, and then check it to make sure you factored that out. Look, uh, I wrote x plus 4. So minus 8 times x is minus 8x. And minus 8 times positive 4 is negative 32. So sometimes you might have made a mistake if you tried to factor it. But if you write them the same, then you'll for sure, because these two have to be the same for you to continue. So this and this is my common factor. So I take it out, and what am I left with is x squared minus 8. Okay, now we're on to our trinomials. And this is the thing where we did a times c, and then we figured out what b was. So when I do this, okay, we wrote a times c, and that is 1 times 24, which is 24. And then you had b was equal to negative 10. So you're looking for two numbers that multiply to give you 24 and add to give you negative 10. So if they add to give you negative 10, then both of these are going to have to be negative. So hopefully you know that a negative times a negative is a positive. So the factors of 24 that add up to 10 are 6 and 4. And actually I was supposed to do this on the side. That's negative 6 and negative 4. Let me see if I can move this. Nope, moved the wrong thing. Um, oh, there we go. Pooh. Come on, move over. It won't move over. Okay, I'll just go over here and finish it because I wrote that in the wrong place. All right, so that means that my factors, okay, we're breaking up this 10 um, to x squared minus 6x minus 4x plus 24. Got to pause for a second. Okay, so once we've written that out, then we group, and it appears I may need to put more room between these. The common factor here is x, leaving me with x minus 6. Always takes that sign. The common factor is 4. And remember I told you, write that again. And then check it. Minus 4 times x is minus 4x. Minus 4 times negative 6 is positive 24. So from here, I'm going to write out this common factor. This is the common factor, x minus 6. And that leaves me with x minus 4. So that's what I put in the blank. Okay, next. Same kind of thing. AC, I may come up here and do it. A times C is negative 77, and B is positive 4. So you had to think of two numbers that multiplied to give you um, negative. That means one's going to be negative and one's going to be positive. And hopefully the numbers that come to mind are 7 times 11. And if this is positive, then I know my 11 will be positive. So negative 7 times 11 is negative 77, and negative 7 plus 11 is 4. So I'm good to set up my grouping, which is x squared minus 7x plus 11x minus 77. And I'm grouping this and this, which gives me x times x minus 7 plus 11 and x minus 7 and 11x, 11 times negative 7, so I got that right. This is my common factor, x minus 7 and x plus 11. Okay, number 25. Okay, same kind of thing. All right, So I am looking for two numbers, factors of 35. So A times C, I'm going to write it over here. AC, that's not what I wanted. I want just one. Uh, A times C is negative 35, and B is negative 1. So I'm looking for those numbers, okay? And remember, oops, this is times, and one would be negative, and one will be positive. Now, I'm looking for the factors of 35, okay? And if you don't know, we've talked about this. It's 1 and 35. 2 doesn't go into it. 3 doesn't go into it. 4 doesn't go into it. 5, it's 5 times 7. 6 doesn't go into it. I'm going in order down here. 7 goes into it, but it's already on the other side, so I'm done. So I have to, because one's plus and one's minus, I'm subtracting these numbers to get to 1. There are, 35 minus 1 is not 1. 7 minus 5 is not 1. So this one is prime. Okay, 5x squared minus 7x, 17x plus 6. So A times C is 30. B is negative 17. Oh, this is what happens when y'all aren't with me. That's supposed to be a times up there. It's times. These two are multiplied. These two are added. Okay, since I'm adding and getting a negative number, I know that both of these are negative. Okay, so my factors are going to be the same. And I'm looking for two numbers, factors of 30. Okay, and just to review this again, so if you have trouble with that, you can see it's 1 times 30. 2 goes into it 15 times. 3 goes into it 10 times. 4 doesn't go. 5 goes into it 6 times. 6 is already on the other side, so I know I'm done. And I'm looking for a pair of numbers that add up to 17. There it is right there. So I got minus 15 and minus 2 are my numbers. And so to break it up, I've got 5x squared minus 15x minus 2x plus 6. So these always carry down. It's only the middle one that's being split up. So common factor here is going to be 5x. And that leaves me with x minus 3. Always carry down that sign. Minus, common factor here is 2. And then I copy that and I check it. So negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. So my common factor is x minus 3, and what's left is 5x minus 2. This is my common factor. Okay, we got some more. We won't have some more. Like I said, there'll be double numbers when you do them on your test. So here again, A times C is negative 40. So I have two numbers, and if it's negative, one's going to be negative and one's going to be positive. B is 18, and these two are going to add up to that. One's negative. So the factors of 40 that subtract to give you 18. Well, if it's positive 18, then I know it's going to be positive 20 and negative 2. Okay, so I'm going to break it up. 5x squared. Now you could put, well, we'll go ahead and do that. Let's do minus 2x plus 20x minus 8. So what do these have in common? They have an x. What's left? 5x minus 2. Always carries down that sign. What do these have in common? A 4. And what's left? Remember I said copy and check. It's much easier than having to factor again. 20x and then 4 and negative 2 give me negative 8. So here is my common factor. So I'm writing 5x minus 2 and x plus 4. And the bell's going to ring, so I got to pause and come back and finish. Okay, to finish it up, we're on the last page. Okay, so we're continuing with this a times c. So a times c, this case is negative 21. Doesn't look like an equals. And we're looking for those two numbers that multiply. If it's negative, one has to be negative, one positive. B is negative 4. So sometimes you should always check these numbers first. And if you notice it's 7, I wrote a 7 instead of a 4 there because nobody's here to correct me. 7 and negative 3, they do give you negative 21, but if I make the 7 negative and the 3 positive, then I'll get my negative 4 that I need. So when I break this up, 7x squared minus 7x plus 3x minus 3. And what do these have in common? They have a 7x, leaving me with x minus 1. And this has a common 3. Remember, we take down that sign, leaving me with x minus 1 again. These are the same. That is my common factor. X minus 1 times 7x plus 3. Okay. 6x squared. So this time AC is going to be negative 36. So again, negative means one's negative, one's positive. B is negative 5. So as I've said earlier, the hardest part sometimes is figuring out these numbers, but we've talked about if you need some help listing the factors, come see me. This is going to be negative 9 and positive 4. So I'm going to get 6x squared minus 9x plus 4x minus 6. And my first two have a common factor of 3x, leaving me with 2x minus 3. And sometimes it's easier to check it, y'all. 3x times 2x is 6x squared. 3x and negative 3 is negative 9x. Carries down that sign. And what do these have in common is a 2. And hopefully that's 2x minus 3. Let's check. 2 times 2x is 4x. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. Here's my common factor, so that gives me 2x minus 3 and 3x plus 2. Okay, difference of two squares. All right, this is a pattern. That's why I didn't leave you a lot of work because I'm really hoping that you remember the pattern. The difference of two squares is the expression that is a squared minus b squared, and that always factors to a plus b, a minus b. The order doesn't matter. It can be a minus b, a plus b. Okay, so all you're doing or thinking to yourself is what's the square root of that and what's the square root of that, which gives us x minus 7, x plus 7. Okay, again, square root of that, square root of that. The signs, okay, one's plus, one's minus. So that gives me 7x minus 2, 7x plus 2, square root of that, square root of that. Okay, it's 9x, but this is to the fourth, and so you take half of that, which is squared, plus 1. Oh, better write an intermediate step because I can see this. 9x squared plus 1, 9x squared minus 1. Okay, so what we have here is another, this right here is the difference of two squares again. So what you kind of need to think to yourself is um, that you want to take the square root of that and the square root of that to write it again. So I think I'm going to have to write this a little bit smaller to get it in my blank. And so that makes your final answer 9, because if it's a plus sign, you can't do anything to it. And then I break that up, and that's 3x plus 1, 3x minus 1. So that's what you should have there on your paper. All right, we're on the down home stretch. PST. Okay, PST, or perfect square trinomial, is one that's a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. And if you know that, or especially on these that I tell you, it's just a plus b squared. And again, if it's minus, okay, If that's a minus, that's a minus. That's the only difference. So 36x squared, that means I got to take the square root of that number and the square root of that number when I tell you what kind of problem it is. Square root of the first one is 6x. It always takes the sign of that term plus, and the square root of 1 is 1, quantity squared. Okay, again, you're looking for the square root of that and the square root of that, and that gives you x. Always takes the sign of that second term minus 6 quantity squared. Okay, so then the last thing is to mix them up. And these are where you have your steps. And the first thing that I told you to always do is look for a GCF. And then the second thing is to figure out how many terms you have, because that lets you know how you want to treat it. Okay, so this first one, what number goes into 18 and 98? And there should always be some kind of work here. Okay, 2 times 9 x squared and 2 times 49 gives me 98. These are both perfect squares, which is like the problems that we had right here. Okay, because this is two terms, there's a difference, and these are both perfect squares. So when I factor that, I'm going to have to take the square root of that and the square root of that, leaving me with 2 times 3x minus 7, 3x plus 7. Okay, look at the next one. And what is common factor? There's not a variable in every term. If any of the terms have a 1, then you don't have to worry about a numerical GCF. So now I count my terms, and I have 4 of them. And the only way we've done 4 is to group. So I group them and look for my common factor. The lowest exponent is 2, so I have x minus 5. Always takes this sign. And these have a common factor of 4. And I'm hoping it's x minus 5, but I'm going to check. Minus 4 times x is minus 4x. Minus 4 times minus 5 is positive 20. So here's my common factor. And I don't know if you can see what's left here. This is x minus 5, x squared minus 4. Whenever you factor something, let me see if I can get this. And you end up with an exponent, okay? You need to always think if it can go further. Okay, if you don't have an exponent on your variable, then you know you're absolutely done. But this is again two terms, both of which are perfect squares, so it's going to factor to x minus 2x plus 2. Okay? Common factor, numerically, 9 goes into everything. So when 9 goes in, x squared minus x minus 6. Look how much smaller your numbers are and how much easier it is going to be to factor this. So I have 3 terms. It's not a PST because 6 is not a perfect square number. So I'm looking for a times c, which is negative 6. Two numbers that multiply, and one's going to be negative because I'm negative. And then negative 1, two numbers that add up. So the factors of 6 that give me negative 1 when I add them are going to be negative 3, positive 2. So, and I don't care if you write that down. It's a way for you to help figure out how to solve it, okay? Some people can figure it out without doing that. But I would expect to see x squared minus 3x plus 2x minus 6. And so when I group these two, okay, when we did this, we put a bracket this time. Take that thing out. I don't want that parentheses yet because I have to write my common factor. So my common factor with these two terms is x, leaving me with x minus 3, plus common factor here is 2 times x minus 3. Close my bracket, and I have to put the 9 down, but then this is my common factor, and I can go back to my parentheses. So it's x minus 3, and then x plus 2. And it was a hard one. Okay, these are the hardest problems on the test. Go do everything else, and if you can't do those, that's 3 problems that you're going to miss. Okay, 38. 38 is going to be Common factor, so I'm looking for that first, which is 4x, leaving me with x squared minus 1. And as I said, if you factor out and you have an exponent on the variable after you factored out, you need to think, can I go further? Well, this is two terms, both of which are perfect squares. So, and it's a difference. So this becomes x minus 1, x plus 1. Okay? Two terms. They are both squared, but this is not a minus sign. So this answer is, cannot write. Take that off. This answer is prime. Okay? And then the last one that we have is y squared, y to the fifth plus y, common factor of y, leaving me with y to the fourth plus 1. Again, I have an exponent here that I need to look at, but that is a perfect square and that is a perfect square, but again, that is plus sign, so it cannot go any further, leaving you with this as the final answer. Okay? So, hopefully that helps you prepare and lets you know what you don't know, and you will practice IXL. I told you in the lesson when we did factoring is a great way to practice up on these concepts. If you have any questions, please come see me.